What's good, everybody? It is time to dive completely into what's going on with the real estate market in Surrey, British Columbia for the month of March 2026. If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Darren German. I'm a real estate professional servicing the area and surrounding municipalities. And if you're new to this YouTube channel, we do deep dives on everything you need to know about buying, selling, owning, or anything going on in the wild world of real estate in British Columbia. So make sure you subscribe and you get access to all of that great information. So let's jump right into this and talk a little bit about what's going on with Surrey real estate. Now, I want to remind everybody, if you're new here as well, we are referencing something called the home price index when we talk about what's happening with prices in the city of Surrey for condos, townhomes, and detached homes. And I want you to think of the home price index a little bit like inflation. You know, our house prices, generally speaking, going up or down. What the HPI is, or the home price index, it's tracking the value of a typical home over time. It's not a real house, but what we call a benchmark property with consistent features. So this lets us know if it's kind of going up or down, as I said, filtering off or out rather those one-off sales. So I wanted to bring this to your attention here. This is the news release that came out from the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board and show you just a little bit about what they're saying. So, what I thought was interesting is for the month of February, last month, those are the most recent stats that just came out, we saw a 36% increase from the month of January, but a 38%, we were 38% below the 10-year seasonal average. So, we're still well below where we should be for this time of year in terms of what is happening with sales. Now, we're in very buyer-friendly conditions still, generally speaking. When we're looking at what's going on with inventory, the amount of inventory that's available compared to the amount of sales actually happening, this is a very, very favorable market generally for buyers, and we'll talk about specific markets as we get into it here. Overall, inventory does remain well above seasonal norms for the Fraser Valley, with about 8,300 active listings, which is up 8% from January, but is 51% above the 10-year average. So let's jump into it a little bit here. And what I'm showing you on the screen right now, the red line signifies what has happened with values in the greater Vancouver region and all types of homes kind of thrown into a blender. And you can see just really since 2025, it's just been kind of a soft decline in terms of pricing. The blue line represents the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, which is North Delta, basically all the way to Abbotsford, includes Mission, that sort of stuff. So you can see what's happened with their home prices as well. Now, one thing I will remind you to consider is to also consider what we like to call micro markets. This is a broad stroke on the city of Surrey. There is micro markets. As an example, there is no such thing as a Surrey townhome. There is such thing as a Grandview Heights townhome in South Surrey that only has 3 bedrooms. So different areas are performing differently. Of course they are. So this is just to give you a general overview of exactly what's going on. So let's talk about condominiums in the city of Surrey. The red line on this graph indicates what we call a balanced market condition, which is usually between about 15 to 20% of inventory actually transacting each month. And you can see condos finish in and around the 10% mark. So this is in a buyer's market condition. And when we see properties in that sort of condition, it tends to have downward pressure on pricing. And that, in fact, is exactly what has happened, not only month over month, but over the course of the last year. So condominiums in the city of Surrey, month over month, are down about $1,700. Over the last year, they're down over $46,000. So as you would expect, this is a market that is highly in the advantage of a buyer. Now, a few things to note about what I am sharing with you right here. Activity for this type of product is near 18-month low, which I think we all know why. We'll actually talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the video. New projects are also stalling. You've been probably following the news and seeing what's going on with a lot of new construction buildings, not just limited to Surrey, but also throughout the Lower Mainland and actually other big areas across Canada. So it's going to be fascinating to watch in about a year or two when some of these new projects that should have been built, could have been built, are not coming to market. What happens with the overall inventory as the new inventory really shrinks and kind of goes away? So it'll be fascinating to watch that. We're going to talk a little bit about mortgage rates, but I'll give you a little teaser here. CIBC has projected, or predicted rather, for the year of 2026 that we're probably unlikely to see the Bank of Canada remove or move interest rates. Now, of course, that could change. I mean, as the day of filming this, there is now a war in Iran that didn't exist a week ago. So, the world can change obviously very, very quickly. We'll talk about rates a little bit more towards the end of the video. And obviously, in a market like this, sellers need to be ultra competitive. There is a lot of condominiums for sale. There's a lot of choice for buyers. And with condominiums, a lot of them look the same. So you got to be very, very competitive with your price to get the attention of a buyer. Let's talk about townhomes across Surrey. So again, red line, kind of that balanced market area. You can see that the market did improve ever so slightly and trended towards that balanced market condition month over month. So we're getting very close there, but we still are in a buyer's condition, generally speaking. Now, prices, interestingly enough, flatlined month over month. They didn't really go up. They didn't really go down. It was a minuscule that they actually went down, but it's kind of fascinating to see that market, it looks like, compared to the big slope you saw from the spring of 2025 into the latter parts of 2025, has really kind of slowed off for townhomes. So month over month, they're down about $500 for the benchmark price of a townhome in Surrey. And year over year, they're down about $65,000. Now, that's obviously a much bigger number. This market is highly in advantage, or was highly in advantage to us, to the buyer, but you did see it start to kind of trend back up towards that balanced market. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Activity has improved month over month for townhomes in the city of Surrey, and prices have flatlined, as I said. Now, I've talked about this many times when I do these kind of market update videos, that townhomes are the missing middle. There are that balance of affordable homes with the space that the millennial generation who's starting to have kids and that sort of stuff really, really needs. So this is always, to me, the market to keep an eye on. They're not 400 square foot investment condos in downtown Surrey. These are actually spaces that people can live and thrive, and usually are in really good areas close to good schools and shopping and amenities and all that sort of stuff. So always an interesting area to watch, including if you are thinking about investing in properties. They typically have lower carrying costs as well than a condominium, just in terms of strata fees anyways. Buyers are really wanting these. This is the ideal for them. Everybody likes the idea of a detached home, but they're quite expensive, of course. But buyers really crave these types of properties because of everything I mentioned previously. Now, let's talk about detached homes in the city of Surrey. You can see just how challenged this market is. In fact, it's been one of the more challenged markets, detached homes specifically, compared to the other two asset classes for quite some time. So we are quite a ways from a balanced market and well into a buyer's market condition. And we've been floating in that area for a long time, which has had a really big impact on detached home prices. And it doesn't look like they've really slowed down, unfortunately, folks. So month over month, detached homes in the city of Surrey are down about $7,200. And year over year, they're down about $156,000. That is no joke. That is a big, big difference. Now, this market clearly an advantage for a buyer, and this isn't going away. You can see down at the bottom there, I say, put your offers out there. That market is going to remain challenged for now. And if you're someone who thinks it's just simply going to change because you're closing your eyes and wishing and praying that it's going to change, that is not a strategy. We don't know where this is necessarily going to end up. So you need to pay attention for that. If you're a buyer, put your offers out there. You deserve to get a really good price on a house right now, because it's simply so challenging to sell a home in Surrey. Now, again, micro markets, different areas are doing different things, different suburbs within Surrey. Surrey is one of the biggest municipalities in Canada. So take this as a broad stroke, but really important to understand what's going on at a local level as well. There's tons of inventory to choose from. Now, I had chatted about, or mentioned rather, interest rates at the beginning of this video, and just thought this was fascinating. This is from the British Columbia Real Estate Association. In fact, I talked about CIBC and their projections as well at the beginning of this video. And this comes from the British Columbia Real Estate Association, and just some highlights from a recent report that they released, that they just said that they feel that Canadian fixed rate mortgages are holding steady amidst bond volatility. Trade uncertainty continues to be a drag on economic growth. However, there has been some updates since the filming of the last version of this for last month, which I'll talk about in a moment. And after 2 rounds of rate cuts, is the Bank of Canada done? So they're actually projecting over the course of 2026 that the 5-year average discounted rate for an uninsured mortgage is not going to change. They don't think the variable rate is going to change over the course of 2026, and the 5-year qualifying rate, they don't think is going to change over the course of 2026. So it'd be fascinating to see what happens. Obviously, we're all trying to predict what's going to happen in the future there, but will be interesting to see. Now, the thing that I will leave you with here is market drivers. What are some important things for us to be considering when we're either buying or selling a home? Well, the big one is mortgage rates. Of course, we just touched on that. We don't need to go further in that, but economic shifts. So there's some big announcements, some big changes since we did the last one of these videos. The United States has ruled that the tariff environment that we had, that was of concern for our economy, is it's still affecting lots of other areas of Canada. including our own area. The Supreme Court of the United States deemed that what was happening was illegal and needed to be stopped. Now, there's been some more noise and some more lower tariffs that have come in since then on certain things, but very, very fascinating what is kind of unfolding in the United States there, and their market has a big impact on our market. And any investment, and buying a home even to live in is an investment. Markets like certainty that gave everybody probably a little more certainty, even though there's going to be lots of uncertainty always coming out of that camp, it seems like, for probably the next 3 years. But very interesting to see what happened with that and what effects that might have on the housing market moving forward in Canada and locally here. And as of about a week ago, there is another war going on, a war in Iran. Now, how much this will affect housing in Surrey, British Columbia, tough to say, but more so just to say that economic shifts happen. They can happen all the time. There was a new budget released by the BC government as well. Lots of conversation about that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I implore you to go check it out, because there's some things in there you probably want to know and, get interested in, and maybe call your local government official. But, anyways, we'll leave it at that. We won't get political in here. Demand, there's tons and tons of demand for housing right now. People are just sitting on the sidelines. Be careful about how long you wait. Just remember that sage advice. Hopefully, seasonal trends. We are getting into the spring market. In fact, it's starting right around now, and we're seeing some decent numbers month over month. So we'll certainly have to see what's going on with that and local policy changes. I don't think anything's coming up with that in the near future, only because when the markets are down, our government really needs property transfer tax revenue, and I don't think they want to poke the bear anymore right now, because the markets are relatively slow in comparison to the 10-year average we were talking about earlier. Hey, if you got value out of this video, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe if you're interested in everything going on with Surrey, South Surrey, White Rock, or anything in the wild world of British Columbia real estate. There's always lots of announcements going on. And if you find yourself that you are someone that needs help either selling a home or buying a home, you can connect with me by using the link below in the description of this video, and we'll see what we can do to help set you on the right course and get your real estate affairs in order. All right, we will look forward to seeing you next month. Cheers.